In this video, we're going to cover how to build service estimates with Landscape Management Network. By service estimates, we mean estimates like mowing, fertilizing, snow plowing, and any other type of work where you're going to return to a job site over and over to perform similar tasks. If you're looking how to build construction type estimates, please refer to the previous video, Construction Estimating, for standard or construction style estimates. So if you've been following along in the virtual workshop, you know that we've covered the big picture. How to build a budget, how to build a pricing system that recovers your overhead, and how the pricing system and the estimate work together. And that's all covered more in the standards estimate video than we're going to do here, to save those who are watching both from watching it again. So if you need an overview or big picture view, take a look back at the standard or construction estimates video for a more detailed description of the big picture. But in a nutshell, let's catch you up to where you are. In the first videos of this virtual workshop, you set up your budget. Now, using the numbers from your budget, LMN's going to work out how much you need to mark up your crews, your equipment, and your materials to recover not only their costs, but your company's overhead costs and a fair profit. Now we're going to look at building an estimate. You're going to assign crews or hours, equipment, and materials to a specific job to come up with a price for that job. And because it links directly with your budget and your company's overhead, we're going to be able to ensure that the price for the job covers not only its costs, but also that job's fair share of overhead, and make sure it delivers a profit. Best of all, everyone in your company can plug into the numbers from the budget without actually having to see the budget and all its sensitive information. Using LMN, everyone can use one standardized, accurate set of numbers for profitable pricing that can be taught to anyone in less than an hour. So let's jump right in. We'll start here from the LMN home screen. To get to estimating, you need to click the button for budgeting and estimating. Then go to Manage Estimates. You have two options at this point, Standard Estimates and Service Estimates. Standard estimates are construction type estimates for projects where you get in, you build something, and then move on to something else. Service estimates are more for service type contracts, like grounds maintenance or snow and ice, where you're going to return to the site over and over to perform similar tasks for a season. This video is going to be based on service estimates, so let's click Service Estimates. The next screen here is the Manage Estimates screen. Here you're able to create new estimates, edit existing estimates, copy estimates, and print reports on your different estimates by their different statuses. The budget here is the default budget that's going to be used when you're creating this new service estimate. It's an important field. You should make sure that this is set to your most current budget to be used for service estimating. Some of you have only one company budget. Other companies may have a budget specific to each division, so make sure this is set correctly. Let's start by creating a new service estimate. Click the Add New button and a new estimate will appear. Start by entering the name of your client. If it's a homeowner, we recommend that you start with the last name first so that your list of estimates appears nice and neatly alphabetically. Institution or company names can be entered as is. Next, you want to enter the job site address. Make sure you enter the name of the city and the state or province. If you do, Google Maps can quickly map this job for you when we get to the estimating screen. You can also enter a separate billing address if it's different than the job site address. If they're the same, just click the Same as Job Site button. Finally, it asks you for the budget that you wish to use to price this estimate. It's going to use your default budget, the one that you had selected on the previous screen to price this job, but here's your chance to change it if you need to. You can also change the overhead recovery method, but it's not recommended. You should stick with one overhead recovery method for each budget that you've built. If you try to use different methods for different jobs while using the same budget, you're going to break the math that makes the overhead recovery work. Click OK now when you're ready to start your estimate. The information that you just entered will show up at the top of your estimate, but you'll also be able to enter more details. Click the Contact Information button, and you'll see you can enter 2 phone numbers and an email address for this client. You can click OK when you've finished. Also, just below this, you can click Map Address. When you do this, Google Maps is going to generate a map to the site for you. It makes for quick and easy map printing, especially in the morning when you're trying to get a crew out the door. If you use this little blue button on the map, then click Get Directions, Google can automatically generate a complete route right from the place you currently are to the place that you're trying to. Now the date here is the date that you created the estimate, and the project name is the name that you assigned the estimate when you filled out the previous screen. The estimate ID number is a randomly generated unique number that you can use to identify your estimate. And the version number field here lets you assign a version number to the estimate in the cases where you might be offering 2 or 3 different versions or options for an estimate to a client. Estimate notes are notes that will appear on your printed proposals. You'd typically use this as an introduction to your estimate or to your company. Something like, "Thank you for the opportunity to quote on this project." Or perhaps you have a 1-paragraph description of your company's history or its values. This is the type of information that probably would appear here. Estimator notes, on the other hand, are internal notes that you keep about the job. You might jot notes that were given to you by the client during your site visit. You can make notes about the client or the site, things to remember when you're estimating, such as access restrictions, parking or delivery notes, soil or site conditions, anything that you want to remember now but don't want to actually show up on printed proposals. Then you can set the estimate status. Right now, the status is set to estimation phase because we're estimating this job. But as we move this job along, we can set the status to say that it's waiting for approval, or it's been proposed to the customer and we're waiting for an answer, or that we've won or we've lost the job. The next section is the estimate summary information section. But since we haven't added any costs or prices yet, let's come back to this section after. So let's start adding and pricing our work. To do this, you want to scroll down to the work summary section. And here's where you're going to come up with a price. So we're going to start by adding something called services to this estimate. Now, a service is a group of labor, equipment, materials, or subcontractors needed to get a task done. Each service has a different number of visits, which is the number of times that you estimate you're going to go back to perform this service. So how should you break down your job in terms of services? Well, it does depend on the type of work, but most likely you're going to need a new service for each different task that requires a different number of visits. If you're selling a lawn contract with about 32 cuts and 4 fertilizations, then you have 2 services on this estimate. One service is the 32 cuts, the other service is the 4 fertilizations. You might do them at the same time, but you're going to split it up for accurate estimating. You're going to price the hours and equipment needed to mow the grass 32 times, and then you'll price the hours and materials needed to fertilize the 4 times. You don't want them combined in the same service because they obviously have a different number of visits. We're going to mow 32 times, but we're only going to fertilize 4 times. Let's look at adding a service now. Start by clicking the Add Service button. This will bring up a service screen. Here you're going to enter the name of the service, the estimated number of visits, and how you want to price the service. If you choose per visit, it's going to show the customer the price for each time you do a visit. If you choose per season, then the proposal is going to show the customer a total price for all the visits that you've estimated. And if you choose per hour or per unit, then it's going to show the customer the rates or prices for each item in the service. So if you've set up your crews at $40 an hour in a service that's billed as per hour or per unit, it's going to show that price to your customer. You can use this setting for time and materials type work, especially for things like spring cleanup or fall cleanups, when you may bill based on the amount of time you spend on site. So click OK to start adding costs or prices to this service. When you click OK, the screen's going to refresh. Now you'll notice that the service name and the number of visits show up in the top left corner. You'll also see some new buttons here to add labor, equipment, materials, and subs. They show up across the top as well. This is how you're going to add costs and prices. Service work is mostly based around labor, so let's start there. Click the Add Labor button, and you'll see all the crews you've added to your estimating catalog. We're going to assume that you've already gone through the estimating catalog videos, but if you haven't, you will want to set up some costs and prices here first before you dive into estimating. Find the crew that you want to add, then click the little green plus button beside the crew to move that labor item over to the right side. Items on the right side are the items that are waiting to be added to the estimate. A really important thing to remember when you're adding labor is that, by default, you set up your costs and prices in man hours, not crew hours. If you followed the instructions on the labor catalog screen and in the video for your labor catalog, then what you did is work out the average cost per man, not the total cost for the crew. Your costs and your prices are the average cost and your average billable rate per man hour, not per crew hour. So therefore, when you're estimating hours here, you have to think in man hours, not crew hours. We believe that this is the correct method for estimating, even if it does require a little more thinking. You can't do job costing in crew hours. Your accounting can do job costing in man hours. It can look at how many payroll hours were booked to the job and compare it to what you estimated. It cannot, however, do job costing in crew hours. There's no way your payroll report can show how many total crew hours. And if your crews ever change in size, and there's 2 people one day and 3 people the next, crew job costing is useless. Fluctuating crew sizes are a bigger deal in construction than they are in service or maintenance, but the possibilities for exceptions can't be ignored. So once you've added your crew, they need a way to get to the site, so go to the equipment section. Ideally, you've set up one equipment item that includes the cost of the truck, the trailer, and a standard package, which is all the equipment that comes along with it. Since we're doing a mowing service, we'll look at a standard mowing package, which will include mowers, blowers, trimmers, all in one cost and price. This makes estimating faster, keeps everything neat and clean. For more information on how to group these items together in one cost or price, see the Pricing Your Equipment video earlier in this series. If you're estimating snow or any other type of service work, you're obviously going to add the equipment required for that specific type of work. Let's add our equipment now. We'll click the plus button beside the equipment that we want to add to push it over to the right-hand side of the screen. Now you want to add materials. Now remember, in my example, I'm doing lawn mowing. I might mulch the property once a year, or I might plant annuals in the spring, but I won't do either of those items 32 times, and that's what I'm building here. 32 service visits of lawn mowing. Mulching, planting, fertilizing, spring and fall cleanups, these are separate services, and we can add these to the estimate after. But right now we're just focused on 32 visits of lawn mowing, so I'm not going to add any materials here. In a mowing example, the only material that I might add here would be perhaps a disposal fee if you charge your customers a small fee to dispose of garbage or grass clippings. For snow work, you would have a salt or de-icing material charge here. When you've got all the components needed for lawn mowing, double check that your quantities are accurate. Make sure the hours here are in man hours, and your equipment hours are the time that your equipment is on site, and you might choose to include drive time as well. Now, unless you have a one-man crew, your equipment hours is always going to be less than your labor hours. If it takes 2 people 2 hours to cut grass at a site, your crew hours should be 4. That's 2 men with 2 hours each. But your equipment hours is going to be 2. That's the 2 hours that your truck and trailer is going to be parked at the site. Click OK to add these to your estimate. Now your items drop into the estimate, and let's go through what you're looking at on the screen. Here I have the labor and equipment items, and each are set for 32 visits. I have 4 hours of labor and 2 hours of my equipment, so it's 2 guys for 2 hours. Your raw costs are both shown here. These are the cost per hour, or whatever unit you've decided to measure them by. Over here is your cost per visit. So these are the raw costs times the number of hours per visit. Then you have your break-even per visit. These are the costs plus whatever you need to recover for company overhead per visit of lawn cutting. This number here should be your absolute rock bottom price. You're not making any money here, but you're not losing any either. We want to make a profit on our work, so here's the price that we need to charge to make the profit that we want. Now the profit that you want is set by the budget that you're using. If your budget says you're planning on making a 7% profit, then LMN is going to calculate how to earn that 7% on this service. If your budget says you're going to lose 2%, LMN is going to calculate that too. Obviously, if your profit margins aren't where you want them to be, go back and fix your budget until they are. Your budget is the plan that dictates how LMN is going to price this work, and your plan needs to be profitable if you want to price your work profitably. There's a video on the profit and loss statement in this virtual workshop series that explains this in much more detail. In some cases, we want to give a per visit price, and we might also want to give a better price if the customer commits to a seasonal contract. Over here, you can set up a different seasonal price for this job. You might lower the price a bit on a seasonal rate to give the client two options. Here's your rate if you want to get charged each time we visit, but if you sign up for a season, you'll get a lower or preferred seasonal rate. You can then offer your summer or winter clients two different rates using these two price boxes. Next, it shows your price per season. This is your per season unit price, times the number of hours per visit, times the number of visits. And beside that is your estimated profit based on your seasonal price. Numbers shaded in gray are calculated numbers. These cannot be changed. You can, however, change any other number by double-clicking the cell, changing the number or the text to whatever you'd like, and pressing enter. You can also use the edit button near the end of this row to edit detailed information about any of the items on this estimate. Now, if you look at the bottom row of this section, you'll see some very important totals. The first number here is your total cost per visit. The next one beside that is the per visit break-even number. And the third one from the right is the total price per visit. Look a little further to the right, and you'll also see the total price for all the estimated visits this season. Now, many of you aren't going to show your customers a breakdown of the estimated hours and equipment for each job, so you'll probably want to enter some text to describe this work instead. You need the customer notes field for this, so here's how to enter those. What you want to do is back out of this section here. Move up to the top left of the work summary section, right beside the title of your service, and click the back button. This is going to take you to a summary view of all the services on this estimate. Right now we just have the one that we added. You can do a few neat things on this screen. You can override your default price to come up with a nice round even number for your customer. Now that you know exactly where you need to be, you could round your price up or down slightly to make a nice neat number if you want. To override your price, just click this price button underneath the custom per visit or custom seasonal price column. Use the default pricing button to just set or reset the price to the default, or you can click the set a custom price button to type your own custom price. LMN will automatically recalculate each of the unit prices within this service proportionately to calculate the price that you want to set at yourself. To add the notes for the customer, just click the Notes button underneath the Client column. You can enter any text you'd like on this screen, typing a description for your customer. You can also use the formatting tools up the top to bold words or add underlines, make bullets, or change text sizes. Terms and conditions are covered in more detail in a separate video. But if you have set up standard descriptions of your services in your Terms and Conditions section, then all you need to do is select the one you want, drag it over into the text area, and drop it to add it in there instantly. Use this feature. It's going to save you time. It creates standardized professional descriptions for all your estimators, and it reduces the chances for spelling mistakes or other errors. Spelling mistakes will show up in this underlined in red if you're using Google Chrome or Mozilla's Firefox browser. At the time we filmed this video, spell checks are not supported by Internet Explorer or Safari. Click OK when you're finished to return to the services screen. If you need to, you can also enter crew notes as well. These aren't going to show up on your customer's proposal, but they will show up in the job planner report you can print for your crews. Here you could add things like quality control checklists or notes specific to the job site or tool checklists for the crew so they know. The work area template, or the template button, will save this service as a template. It's going to save this group of labor, equipment, and materials so that you can add it to future estimates in the click of a button just by adding the template. For more detail on templates, check out the video on work area templates in this virtual workshop. Copy is going to create a copy of this work area in this same estimate. If you want to copy this work area to a different estimate, you can use the export button above. Or vice versa, you can import a work area that you've already created in a different estimate in the past. If you've done a property of a similar size or description, you can very quickly import the services from that estimate into this one and then tweak it as necessary. It can save you lots of time. Edit brings you back to the screen where you can play with the labor, equipment, materials, and subs individually. You can also get back to this screen if you click this little plus button on the left. And delete, of course, is going to delete the service from this estimate entirely. There's a hold button on the left-hand side. If you want to exclude a service from an estimate, but you don't want to delete it, then turn hold on, and any services that you've selected will no longer show up on the proposal or in the estimate totals. This feature is really handy for instantly producing different versions of quotes, both with and without specific services. It's also useful if the customer wants to exclude something now, but you think they might want to add it back in later. Just click the box on to put the service on hold, and uncheck it if you ever want to add it back into the estimate. Now you probably want to add some more services. For instance, you might be adding fertilizing to this contract. I can click Add Service again, and this time I'm doing fertilizing, so I'll use that as the name, and I'll only put 4 visits. Click OK to add the labor and the materials now for fertilizing. I'm going to need a grounds crew for a portion of the hour, and I'll also need the fertilizer itself. If you have a separate truck that goes out for fertilizing, you might need to also add a truck or equipment. If your crew does fertilizing during or after one of their existing visits for another service, like mowing, you might not need extra equipment at all. Set your quantities correctly, hit OK, and you're done fertilizing. I could also add spring and fall cleanups to this estimate. For this, I'll demonstrate how the import button works. Let's say I've already estimated spring and fall cleanups for a previous job, and it's time and materials work. We bill them an hourly rate on both, so it's easy to bring over from that job. Click the import button now to import a service from another estimate. Now use the search box to search for the estimate that you want to import from. You can search by customer name, address, estimate ID, or any other important information. Just remember you're searching for the estimate, not the name of the service. When you click Search, the drop-down box loads the estimates that match your search. Find the estimate you want to import from, then use the checkboxes to select which services you want to import or copy. Click Next and all the other import options come up. Now you can choose to copy, which doesn't change the old estimate, or move, which is going to change the old estimate. Move is actually going to pull the work areas out of the old estimate and put them into the one you're working on. Be careful with this one. Then you can choose to keep or recalculate all the cost and pricing data, whether you want to keep or reset the quantities from the old estimate, and whether you want to copy over the customer and crew notes you used in the old estimate. Set your options correctly, click Next, and then say OK, and the services are either imported or copied from the old estimate and into the estimate that you're working on now. Click the Edit button so you can change the hours, quantities, or even add or subtract items as necessary. Now you can review the estimate summary section. And here we can see important information like total job costs, the break-even for the job, the price we want to charge, and the profit margin we have built into this job after our costs and after our overhead is recovered. To split the estimate across a number of payments, just slide across to the right here and use the number of payments drop down to pick how many payments you want to split the estimate into. Note that there's 2 values in this section, contract total and seasonal total. The contract total is going to show you the total price of the contract across the number of payments you selected. It includes every service below. The seasonal total only includes the services where you picked seasonal as the billed as. To see which services you've marked as seasonal, just look back at your work summary below under the billed as column. Your seasonal total only includes services that you flagged as seasonal. Now there's 2 sets of what we call terms and conditions if you scroll up and to the right a little. We call them terms and conditions, but they're basically blocks of text that you can use for anything. It's how you enter text on your estimate. You might enter contract specifications, a welcome paragraph, payment terms, a description of your warranty, or any other text you want to include in a printed proposal. Now there's a video dedicated to terms and conditions in the virtual workshop, so we won't go into detail here. But note that header terms and conditions are going to be printed before your pricing, while footer terms and conditions are going to show up after. I'll open up the footer terms and conditions to see where we can enter the text. You can create standardized terms and conditions here as well, just like your standard warranty or your standard payment terms. These are going to appear on the left-hand side of the screen, and you set these up back in the terms and conditions menu in your Manage Estimates part of LMN. Once you've set them up, you can just drag and drop them in to make estimating fast and accurate. Now you're ready to print a proposal. All you need to do from here is move up to the top right-hand side of the screen. Beside the word report, you can drop down this list to see a variety of proposal and job plan or template options that you can generate for this estimate. If you have an estimate with some services marked as seasonal and some as per visit or some as time and materials, then the proposal-mixed billing is probably the right report for you. You can play with other versions to see which ones suit your different estimates the best. Click Print to generate a proposal, and it will generate the proposal as a PDF file. The look and the layout will differ depending on which proposal style you selected, so have a look at the few of the different layouts. With the PDF file, you can save this to your hard drive, print it, or you can even email it right from here. To email, click the file and choose the option to attach to an email. And just before we close this video out, let's look at one handy tip. If you're doing a lot of standard type work like residential maintenance, notice the Save As New button on the bottom. This allows you to instantly save the entire estimate as a new estimate and for a new customer or new job site. If you do a lot of standardized work, like lawn cutting, it's probably a good idea to build estimates for a 15-minute lawn, a 30-minute lawn, a 45-minute lawn, and just save them with the name as estimating template-15 minutes. Anytime you need to estimate your next property that's going to take about 15 minutes, just open the template. Use the Save As New, enter the new customer's name, and then make any adjustments that you need to make, and you'll have a new estimate ready to go in 60 seconds or less. By linking with your budget, LMN's estimates ensure that your prices here are going to cover your costs, your overhead, and the profit you want to earn. It builds a standardized pricing system for every estimator in your company and builds the confidence of whoever's estimating and selling this job to your customer. You and any other estimators in your company can follow a system for pricing your work without the need to even think about it. Start estimating your service estimates with LMN, and you'll experience a new level of control and confidence in your service divisions.